Does this fella here look familiar? Not me, this chap. If he does, if you remember one of these from your childhood, you might be a similar age to myself. 78. That's when this came out. 1978. This is 2XL. An educational entertainment toy. That's where the 2XL name comes from. It's supposed to help you 2XL in your knowledge. It's not really a robot, it does look like one. Its brain is an 8-track cartridge. Not just one though, there are a load of different titles available for this, a surprising number in fact. And it was only on the market in its original guise for just a few years, end of the 70s into the 1980s, although it was sold around the world and it's still fondly remembered by a lot of people nowadays. Now of course I wanted to demonstrate this to you, but the first thing I had to do was to get one working. And my first obstacle was finding the right power supply. The 2XL doesn't run on batteries and mine was missing its DC adapter. And it's complicated by the fact it uses a power jack that's more commonly employed as a microphone or earphone socket, and I don't know what voltage it needs. Now fortunately there's an old 2XL fan site that confirms it uses a 9-volt adapter. And while I've got plenty of multi-voltage adapters in the house with numerous different connectors, the one plug none of them came with was a 3.5mm jack. But after a bit of searching online, I managed to find this. It's designed to power multiple pedal boards, but it's also exactly what's needed to bring the 2XL back to life. Okay, so now I've got the power, but it's best if I don't test this with any of its proper cartridges yet, as the pressure pads in all those have disintegrated. So for its first test, I'm just going to use it with a normal music 8-track cart, and I already know that this one plays well in other machines. In fact, it's one of the posher carts, the ones that use the sprung metal pads. So here goes. Okay, so the music is playing fine, but the playhead just isn't responding to any button presses. It seems to be stuck at its bottommost position, so it can only play through Program 4. Taking a look inside also reveals that the plastic holder that surrounds the playhead is snapped at the top. So even if I got this moving properly, accurate head alignment is going to be an issue. So perhaps this is not the droid I'm looking for. Luckily, there are 2 of them. Yeah, I know. Now, I'd bought this second one because it came bundled with some carts, and I was really just after the carts, but I thought it might be useful to have a spare, and it turns out that was right. Anyway, let's give this one a try. So the good news here is that the head mechanism is working properly on this when I can pick any of the 4 tracks. The bad news though is that we've got this very wobbly sound and there's this annoying tapping as well. I can see the head clamp on this one is intact, so overall this seems to be the best candidate of the 2 to try and get working properly. There's a lot of screws in this. We've got 3 across here, 3 up there, 2 at the top, another 2 down here. So this could take some time. While I'm doing this, I'll just mention that I do remember these being out in the UK, although I didn't quite understand what was going on with them at the time. I was quite young and I saw a robot that didn't seem to move or do anything, and I never saw one demonstrated, so I wasn't very interested in them. Well, that's all the screws out. They used 4 different sizes. Let's see if we can get these 2 halves apart. Now, of course, there's a speaker in the back, so that's going to be wired up to the front. There we go. I don't know if you can see that. It's hard to get the focus on it, but it's Tanashin, or Tanashin, the company behind the cheap cassette mechanisms. I say the company behind them, although of course nowadays they're being remanufactured by other companies to an even lower standard than the originals. But yeah, this is difficult to get into 2 pieces. Okay, what I need to do is get this cartridge mechanism and pull it forwards out of the back of the case. Now those 3 screws I took out before, those were holding it to this side, so really it should just slide out now, but it just doesn't want to. It's stuck fast. Haha, there we go. I was talking with a torch in my mouth. Right. Okay, we can get a better look at this now. I'm just taking the speaker out of the back, it just makes it easier to deal with. Yeah, it seems like some tape has got itself wrapped around the capstan there, and I've got to guess that that's not a good idea. So we need to clean that off. Let's see if it sounds any better without that on there. Right, that was it. It was just this bit of tape that was wrapped around the capstan. And of course then that's not pulling the tape through properly when you put the cartridge in there, but it was also making an awful banging sound as it rotated, and it's fine now. Right, so just a matter of cleaning all the contacts on this now, and put a bit of grease on bits that need grease, and can pop it back together again. So this is really the heart of the 2XL, this section here, because unlike a normal 8-track, 2XL can jump to a specific program, because we've got our 4 buttons on the front here, so we can go straight from program 1 to program 4. On a normal 8-track system, you'd be pressing the button multiple times, you'd sequentially move through the programs, but here we can go to any of the 4 programs just by pressing one button. So at the moment we're on program 1, that's the head against the cartridge, and if I press program 4 it drops all the way to the bottom of the tape, and again go up to the top, down to the bottom, program 2. The mechanism reminds me a little bit of a mechanical telephone exchange. And it doesn't sound too dissimilar to that either. I suspect it's based around rather similar principles in that I'm pressing one button on the front and then it's converting that internally into what are effectively multiple button presses. Now the belt on this one is fine, there's absolutely no need to swap that out, it's perfectly capable of doing its job. The next thing we have to do is get those cartridges fixed up, so let's pop this back together and start on that. I'll just show you the cartridges that came with the machines I bought. I got a total of 6 here. Guinness Book of Records, Fairy Tale Quiz, Science Fiction, Science Fiction 2, 50s and 60s Nostalgia, and Superheroes and Comic Books Cavalcade. Interesting, this one, 50s and 60s Nostalgia, shows that they've got quite a varied catalogue on this. Bear in mind that you'd have a child with this in the late 1970s, they might have their age in single digits, they certainly wouldn't remember the 1950s, so that's something for the parents to play. Also along the bottom here, notice it says, in order to use this program in 2XL, the buttons must be relabelled with the card that's enclosed. Of course, I don't have the card anymore, but you can see here, A is true, B is false, C is yes, and D is no. Of course, on the machine itself, your standard card has a different layout to that. They do the same thing with the Science Fiction 2 as well, so yeah, ideally I'd have the cards that went along with these, but it doesn't matter, I'm sure we can play them without. Now, all of these need fixing, so let's just start on this one and work our way through. Now, 8-track cartridges are held together in various different ways. I can see these ones use plastic tabs. Unfortunately, they can be pulled apart, although you've got to be careful with these ones because sometimes they can snap off, so it might just take me a couple of minutes. Okay, so this is what remains of the sponge. We've got the plastic backing piece here, onto which was glued, that's the remainder of the glue on it there, a sponge, and on the outside of that sponge was this piece of plastic that the tape glides over. So that survived, it's just the sponge in the middle that's gone. Now we need to clean this piece of plastic off, and to that I'm going to attach some of my usual dust excluder stuff. It's not normal draft excluder. Whenever I've shown this, I've got a few people say, oh, you can use any old stuff. Not exactly. You see, this is a little bit different because we've got a glossy plastic coating on here, which is just like that stuff there. So we've got the sponge in the middle, we've got the adhesive backing on it, and then the tape glides over the top of this. That's the important thing. If you got something that was just the middle bit, just the spongy bit, the tape would be gripping onto it. So yeah, make sure you get something that has that glidey surface on there. Anyway, need to clean this off, so I'm just going to use a paint scraper. Now you could just flip this over, but sometimes you have difficulty getting them back in the machine if the glue's, sorry, back in the cartridge if the glue's still on here. Okay, so I'll just cut a length of this off. It doesn't have to match perfectly just yet. We pop it onto there, and actually that's not bad. Pretty close. Now the other thing I have to do is cut a section in the middle, because there's a little peg inside here and it goes on either side of there. And that should do it. So just pop it back together now, making sure we don't trap the tape in any part of it. Right, 1 down, 5 to go. I've changed my technique a little bit. I've started to use 2 separate blocks of this stuff. It just means it's a little bit more springy. Yeah, I think that's a bit better. Right, moving on. And I've started to use a bit of isopropyl alcohol on this glue as well, because it was still quite sticky, and that seems to just free it up a little bit. Makes for a cleaner finish once it's scraped off. Right, they're all done now. That didn't take too long. All ready to play, so let's have a go. Let's go for the science fiction one.
Push the Q. Which show has moon base alpha? I will give you 3 choices. Is the show A, Star Trek, B, Space 1999, or C, UFO? Please answer A, B, or C now. Apparently you are a real sci-fi fan, because you are correct. Space 1999 did have moon base alpha. If you remember, there was a big explosion which pushed the moon out of Earth's orbit. I am getting tired now, so this will be your last question. Since you are obviously quite intelligent and got this question about Space 1999 correct, here is a more difficult science fiction question. David Bruce Banner is a doctor on TV, but sometimes he turns into something else. What other character does David Bruce Banner become? I will give you 3 choices. A, Spider-Man, B, Scalpel Man, or C, the Incredible Hulk. Please answer A, B, or C now.
Okay, let's pick the wrong one this time. We'll go for Spider-Man. Actually, we'll go for the second one. Was it Scalpel Man? We'll leave it on B.
You answered B, and this is not correct. In this particular case, however, I will give you another chance to be correct. So please push A, B, or C now.
Okay, let's go for Spider-Man this time, though.
Even though I gave you 2 chances, you are not correct. You have answered Spider-Man, and the correct answer was C, the Incredible Hulk. I gave you 2 chances because I don't want to get the Incredible Hulk angry. We know what happens in that case, don't we? Thank you for turning me on. I am 2XL, and this program will pit my electronic brain against your biological thinking unit in the area of nostalgia. Please remember to choose answers only after I say the word now. Yes or no, the singing hostess of the Chevrolet show was Connie Stevens. Is this accurate? Answer yes or no now. I detect a superior biological unit in my presence. You have answered correctly. In fact, Dinah Shore was the singing hostess of the Chevrolet show. You are correct.
2XL relied on a very simple idea, an existing technology that was cleverly utilised in a way to make you think that this device was perhaps more intelligent or more sophisticated than it was. It was all based around the 8-track cartridge. These had been on the market since the mid-1960s in the US, and by the time 2XL came on the scene in the late 1970s, the mechanisms for playing these back had become so cheap they could form the heart of a child's toy. However, if you're unfamiliar with the 8-track cartridge, I just want to play you a bit of a video I shot some time ago that explains how these work. So here we go.
Now, an 8-track cartridge is a continuous loop of tape. If an album has 40 minutes on it, it will have a 10-minute loop, approximately, which goes around and around. Well, how does 10 minutes fit 40 minutes worth of music on it? Well, it divides it into 4 programs. Now, when the tape reaches the end, there's a metallic coating on it which drops the playhead down to continue on the next program, and similarly all the way down to the end of the cartridge. The tape head looks like this. We've got a left and a right channel. If we want to play the first program, it goes at the top of the tape and plays tracks 1 and 5 together to produce a stereo sound. And then when it moves down to the next program, it goes to tracks 2 and 6. Next program, track 3 and 7, and next 4 and 8. And that is how an 8-track cartridge works.
Now, the cartridges for the 2XL, it's the same kind of cartridge. It's just a 4-program audio tape again, but the audio on it has been very cleverly structured and arranged in such a way to enable the user to follow a branching narrative path as they jump between the 4 individual programs.
I'll give you questions 15 and 16 together. I'll make 16 easier if you get 15 wrong, and I'll make 16 harder if you get 15 right. But in either case, I'll give you 2 chances at 16 if you need it. Okay, let's go. Question 15. Hold on to your hats. Don Herbert played what character on TV? A. Get Smart, or B. Mr. Wizard. Please answer A or B now. Good button pushing. You are right. Don Herbert played Mr. Wizard on TV. But now, as I promised, since you got 15 right, I'll have to make 16 harder for you.
Now, you might have noticed when we took a look inside this earlier on that it does use a standard stereo playback head, and that's despite the fact that it doesn't really need stereo to perform its function, and it's only got a single mono speaker on the back for the output. There's no headphone socket on here. But then again, it makes perfect sense for them to use a standard off-the-shelf component like that, because it will be tried and tested, and it will be used in a number of different 8-track cartridge players, and most importantly, it would be cheaper than having something made specifically for this. And by using that stereo component, it enables us to have the facility to play back any normal music 8-track cartridge, and you'd hear what was on both the left and right stereo channels, even though you'd just be listening through the one speaker. Any 8-track cartridge player like this one has that ability to move between those 4 programs, and that's all you need to be able to play back one of these 2XL cartridges. You've just got to remember what number relates to which option. For example, 4 is no and 2 is yes. So yeah, with any 8-track cartridge, if you've got some 2XL carts, you can play along with the games.
Section number 2. This section is about bionic people. Question number 8. What organization do Jamie Summers and Steve Austin both belong to, or you could say work for? Here are your 3 choices. A. The FBI. B. OSI. Or C. CIO. Please answer A, B, or C now. Snap, crackle, and pop. You are correct. You have answered B, OSI. You may be interested to know that the OSI stands for the Office of Scientific Information. You have answered B, and you are correct.
Now, in the past, I featured another device that used 8-track cartridges for its programs, and that was the MB Omni Entertainment System. It used them in a more sophisticated way, though, than the 2XL, still using the same stereo head arrangement, but one of those heads was for playing back the audio, the other one was for the data. Effectively, it was a reprogrammable computer. Now, when you hear data-type noises coming from the 2XL, the bleeps and boops and things, well, in this case, those are just sound effects. They're just there to fill in a bit of time. Some of them you'll even recognise from various sound effects libraries, and other ones seem to be captured from proper computer components, such as modems. These sound effects are there for a couple of reasons. Since the tape keeps moving all the time, they provide a delay in which a person has a chance to press a button. But also, when they were putting these programs together, if the audio on one of the tracks, one of the programs, didn't quite fit the length of the others, well, you can pad it out with a certain amount of sound effects so that by the time the next option comes in, they all match up perfectly. But the scripting on these has been very cleverly thought out to keep things matched up across those 4 programs, no matter which of the options you picked.
It would probably take your brain 1 hour to cook minute rice. You are wrong. You have answered C, but the correct answer was D. I am sorry. Question number 6.
By the way, the voice of 2XL was provided by the inventor of the device. That's Michael J. Freeman.
You are right. The Minnow was the name of the ship on Gilligan
Now, this particular
Island.
cartridge is split into two. A and B are one set of questions and C and D are another. And at any point you can just jump around, of course. You don't have to wait for it to say now, and then you can hear what's going on elsewhere on the cartridge.
Answer yes or no. We'll just inform you the correct answer is 5. Truman Eisenhower, who began in 1969. You have answered yes, but this is unfortunate because the fact of the matter is...
But I think it's easier to hear what's going on under each of the options on a cartridge at the same time if we take a look at the audio files on a computer. So let's do that. Right, so we're looking at the contents of the cartridge now, the 4 individual programs. Let's just press play and see what we can hear.
Thank you for turning me on. I'd much rather be on than off. I am 2XL, and this program is about...
Right, so as you can see here, they're all playing the same thing at the same time. Let's move along to the first question.
Question number 1. In what city does Batman fight crime? I will give you 3 choices, and I would certainly appreciate it if you would use the A, B, or C buttons to answer it.
Now notice that the audio for the question there was on all 4 channels, so no matter which button you'd pressed on the front of the device, you were going to hear that question. Let's move on, let's hear what the question is.
Does Batman fight crime in A, Metropolis, B, New York, or C, Gotham? Please choose your A, B, or C now.
Right, so we're into the sound effects section there, and now we're going to get the answers. Let's hear what it says.
As Alfred the butler would say, New York is right.
Right, so as you can hear there, we've got different answers on different channels. So let's go through those to hear what they are. We're going to start at the top here. So this is the Q button. This is if we hadn't pressed A, B, or C.
Since Q is pushed, I will assume there is some confusion out there in the peanut gallery. The correct answer to this question was C. Gotham City is where Batman fights crime.
Okay, let's move down to the next one. This would be button A.
Great Caesar's Ghost. You have chosen A, Metropolis, and this is not the correct answer. Batman fights crime in Gotham City. C would have been the correct answer.
Okay, let's try button B.
Holy Big Apple. You have answered B, New York, and you are not correct. Batman fights crime in Gotham City. Although it is true that New York could use a Batman.
This is 1978 or thereabouts, so slightly different New York, but let's have a listen to this one.
As Alfred the butler would say,
You are correct, my person ship.
and Alfred would be right. You have answered C, Gotham City, and you are correct.
Okay, so we've gone past the question, the sound effect, the answer. Now let's see how these branch off again.
Since you have done so well on this question,
Okay, so we've got a bit of a mix of things, so let's start again at the top. So again, this is the question button.
since you got confused on that last question about Batman, here is another question for you. What was the car that Batman used to fight crime called? I will even give you 3 choices. Is your answer A, the Datsun, B, the Batmobile, or C, the Road Monster? Please answer A, B, or C now.
So remember, the answer is B for the first question. Let's see what these are.
Since you did not do too well on this question about Batman, here is an easier question about Batman. What was Batman's boy helper's name? I will even give you 3 choices. Was his name A, Roger, B, Robin, or C, Jimmy? Please choose A, B, or C now.
Right, the answer to that one is also B. So let's go to the next one down.
Here is another question about Batman. And since you missed the last one, I will make this an easy question. What is Batman's name when he is not fighting crime? I will even give you 3 choices. Is your answer A, Stuart Bendor, B, Bruce Wayne, or C, Dick Wayne? Please answer A, B, or C now.
Okay, right, so that one's B as well. I think you can guess what's going to happen on this next one.
Since you have done so well on this question about Batman, here is a more difficult question. What is Batman's boy helper Robin's name when he is not fighting crime? Here are three choices. A. Warren Bendor. B. Dick Grayson. Or C. Tom Ward. Please answer A, B, or C now.
Okay, so we've got 4 different questions under the 4 different buttons, but the answer to all of them is B. Now, of course, when we get to this answer section here, it can't go into the details of what the answer is. It can only say whether you were right or wrong, but not give you the right answer as it did earlier on. So let's just have a listen to that.
You could have used that computer.
Now, again, they're all different, of course. Let's just pick the top one out.
Since Q is pushed, I will assume you got confused. The correct answer to this particular question was B. B.
Right, let's go to the next one.
Boof, pow, bam. You have answered A, but the correct answer was B, so you are not correct.
Okay, let's go to the correct answer.
You probably used the bat computer to get the correct answer because you have answered B, and B happens to be the correct answer to this question. Good work.
And then finally, the last one.
You could have used the bat computer to get the correct answer because you are not correct. The correct answer was B, and unfortunately, you have chosen C.
So you get the idea. It's a little bit like one of those choose-your-own adventure books where you're allowed a certain amount of flexibility with what action you take next by flipping to a certain page, but then at a certain point it'll try and lead you back into the main story again.
Please push the question button now.
So while the 2XL presents a convincing illusion of sophistication, it really is just that. It's a trick. It fools you into thinking there's more going on than there is. In reality, you're just listening to an analog audio tape. It doesn't memorize any scores. There's no data processing going on here at all. But it really is quite clever what they managed to achieve with such limited resources. And I do very much appreciate the fact that they've got a recording there for every eventuality on all the channels. If you, for example, don't press the buttons that you're supposed to be pressing, they've made sure that there's something there for the machine to say in response to that. And therefore, even though that this is just a 21-minute loop of tape, there is still some kind of replayability value in here in getting it to play all the different announcements on all the different tracks.
Please, if you don't mind, answer A, B, or C now. Since Q is pushed, I will assume you got confused. But in this particular case, this is not acceptable. I would like you to try again and choose an answer. So please try again. Choose A, B, or C now.
Question 22.
While the original 1970s 2XL died out in the early 1980s, it was still a device that's familiar to a younger generation in a different design to this one. It was relaunched in the 1990s by Tiger Electronics with a version that used compact cassettes rather than 8 tracks. And yeah, I've got one of those stored away as well. Perhaps I'll get it out one day and we'll have a look at it. But ultimately, there's no real need to play around with the original hardware, because you can play through the entire 2XL catalogue of all the cartridges and cassettes via an excellent online emulator, and I'm going to link to that in the video description.
Marilyn Monroe's real name was Norma Jean Mortenson. Natalie Wood's real name is B. Natasha Gurdon.
So that, or rather this, was 2XL. A device created around a very simple and yet clever idea that managed to create the illusion of something with a degree of interactivity sophistication that wouldn't actually become possible until many years later. But that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.
Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye. This program is over. I thank you. Please turn me off now.